Presented by the BYU Store. Simulcast on BYU TV and BYU Radio. Now live from Studio C, it's Spencer Linton and Jarom Jordan.
BYU Sports Station is live on a Friday, your day-to-day play-by-play in Studio C, presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere. August 19th, wherever and however you're connected, always great to have you with us. I am Spencer Linton, teamed up alongside a man who absolutely loves the fact that Cougar Nation is a very real thing, Jarom Jordan.
Absolutely. It is all over the place. And we talked yesterday about the Hokasons. Jonathan, who's a big-time fan, his son Beckham, right? Mm-hmm. We just played the Open as well. Beckham's actually here in studio. Beckham, come on over, man. Good to see you. He's 3 years old, and he's a huge BYU fan. And
Knuckles.
He gives Nux. What's up, dog?
Yeah,
Good
Beckham.
to have you here, man. Thanks for coming.
He is an esteemed guest in Studio C.
I hope we play his Open for a while.
Daddy's show.
Daddy's show. That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Thanks for coming, Beckham.
Great to have Jonathan and Beckham Hokinson here with us in Studio C. This is the appropriate way to start a fun Friday show.
Absolutely. And not only that, we got a tweet at Love24Car from Tiffany. We've been visiting our children in Washington State while we were in downtown Seattle. Go Mariners and Seahawks. Sucked against the Bears last night, however. My husband was wearing a BYU t-shirt, and some guy yelled towards us, Jimmer Fredette forever!
Yeah.
I love being a Y fan. Hey, even Jimmer, random Jimmer fan in Seattle, you know? Love it.
Is it random, though? It feels like Jimmer fans will live on forever.
Well, it's random because it's just like a random person, but Qui-Gon Jinn said there's no coincidences. So, yeah, take that for what it's worth.
Jimmer Fredette forever. Ty Detmer forever. All of our legends. Steve Young forever, right?
All these guys.
Loaded Friday show lineup for you, including BYU football against the group of 5 teams this year. There are 6. Is this the year that BYU rediscovers the magic against group of 5 teams? And by magic, I mean they can go perfect against their 6 G5 opponents. We will discuss. Who's the biggest threat? A lot of you think Boise State. Is it Boise State? Fun conversation. Darrell Funk, the offensive line coach, will also join us one-on-one with Jason Shepard to discuss the most discussed group in BYU football fall camp. And frankly, Jarom, this Friday show, it needs to be fun with a capital F. So let's get to it, beginning with today's BYU Sports Nation headlines.
BYU football held practice 11 yesterday. For a recap, here's Dave and Blaine, who begin with the secondary.
Thanks, guys. If there was the happiest group on this entire football team, I think today would vote it's the defensive backs.
Yeah, we got to visit with literally the entire 2 deep in the secondary today. Yeah. And when we talked to Malik Moore, he just said they're so excited and so ecstatic about getting ready to play. They can't wait to get to South Florida because they're so confident with how good they are and how deep they are defensively.
We asked him how he's going to top the one-handed pick against Utah State. He said he has a few ideas.
Yeah, he says, I've been thinking about it. I challenged him to catch one behind him one-handed and bring it in without ever using the other hand.
Caleb Hayes is another guy who made big plays last year. We just talked to him. He said they're ready.
Yeah, he said they're physically in good shape. Everybody has stayed relatively healthy through camp, and now they're on their way. And then we have a new addition.
A new kid in town.
Maury Bamba, who the JC transfer from Tyler Junior College. He is in camp now, and this is a guy that can really run and has high potential. He told us, I'm learning the defense. There's a lot of calls out there, but once I learn it, I'm going to be good.
All right, that is the word from Cougar Camp for Blaine Fowler. I'm Dave McCann. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
Thanks, guys. Maury Bamba probably going to fit into the 2 deep there. He was putting in some extra work with Caleb Hayes on the field yesterday. Good to hear. Cougars will practice today and tomorrow before a final fall camp week next week ahead of game week starting on the 29th.
How wild is that? To say the final week of fall camp.
We're close, man.
Good.
Close.
Clark Barrington named a preseason second-team All-American according to the Action Football Network. Barrington has now been selected as an All-American in some regard or another by 5 different organizations. He's getting noticed just like Blake Freeland is. Also of note, 7 BYU players have been named to the Polynesian Player of the Year Award watch list. Chaz Ayu, Atunaisa Mahe, Joe Tukuaku, Puku Nakua, Earl Tuioti Mariner, Keenan Peely, and Isaac Rex. The winner will be decided on December 15th.
One BYU player, I believe, has won this. It was Zach Wilson. His dad is Hawaiian.
His middle name is Capono.
That's right. Number 3, women's soccer wins its season opener 1-0 at Cal State Fullerton thanks to a 61st minute cross from Zoe Jacobs to Bella Folino, who headed in the eventual game winner. The Cougars play at Ohio State next Saturday. Also, Jamie Shepard and Leveni Baca are on the Mac Herman Trophy watch list for the nation's top player.
That was an important breakthrough for BYU women's soccer after the struggles against North Carolina. And our girl Bella, we expect big things from her this year.
You can't go lose to Fullerton, and you know what I mean? So, nice win out of the gates. That's similar to South Florida. You got to go win that game, and then you have some more challenges.
BYU still unbeaten all time against Fullerton in women's soccer, now 8-0-2. Jets head coach Robert Saleh says Zach Wilson, the aforementioned Polynesian Player of the Year, is back in New York and walking. Saleh also said the plan is to have Zach return when, of course, he is 100%. Now, the question is, when will he be 100%? Is it week 1?
He's at 99%. They're like, he is not ready.
Is it week 2?
Yeah. NFL preseason games this weekend. Notables include Brady Christensen and the Panthers against Harvey Longy and the Patriots. Taysom Hill, Daniel Sorensen, and the Saints play the Packers. Taysom against the Packers, Old Packers. Jamal Williams, Lions take on the Colts trio of Samson Nakua, Chris Wilcox, and Tyson Williams tomorrow. And Dax Milne and the Commanders play Matt Bushman, Zane Anderson, and Andy Reid's mustache against the Chiefs.
Women's volleyball will host their annual blue and white scrimmage tomorrow. The 10th-ranked Cougars ready to roll. August 20th, 3 Eastern, Smithfield House. Non-ticket, it's just open seating if you'd like to go and you're in the area. The official season begins on August 26th, the first of 2 BYU Invitationals. Cougars will take on Ryder and Duke at 2 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, respectively.
Carson Lundell's run at the U.S. Amateur Championships ends in the round of 32 after he lost by 1 to Dylan Menanti, a 2-time All-American from Pepperdine. What a run by Lundell and the 4 Cougars in that tournament. That's awesome.
Former BYU backcat Jackson Clough and the Harrisburg Senators took it to the Altoona curve last night. Jackson's RBI double on the top of the 6th gave the Sens a 5-4 lead. It's playing again tonight at Altoona, 6 p.m. Jackson's doing work. We're hoping that he gets the call up very quickly to AAA, just maybe.
Yeah.
In the next year or 2, he's playing in the big show.
Nationals aren't great, if I recall. So, hey, seize that opportunity. Let's go.
Time for What's Trending on BYU Sports Nation, a Friday edition.
You're talking about it, and so are we. It's What's Trending on BYU Sports Nation.
What's Trending presented by Byu Food To Go, the MVP of your next event. The group of 5 on topic today. 6 different G5 opponents for BYU this season in their Independence finale. We focus, naturally, so much attention on the Power 5 opponents, but it was the group of 5 teams last year, Jarom, that caused BYU more problems. 2 losses compared to just 1 loss against the Power 5.
Crazy.
So this season against the 6 teams, and most notably at Boise State, home to Utah State. Do you expect BYU to beat the Aggies and the Broncos and the other 4 teams and go 6-0 against a group of 5 teams?
I don't. I think 5-1 is probably where BYU lands. Certainly we want 6-0. Come on. But what we really should be talking about is the FCS team. No, just kidding. Live on BYU TV. Yeah. I would love a 3-2 Power 5 record and a 5-1 G5 record. That'd be 8-4. But what we really want and think is 9+. So in order to really do that, you probably need to go 6-0 against the G5s. Now, I'd like to just say this publicly, especially to the Mountain West. I feel there are some top 44 wins in there for BYU since they lauded that. Although I put that out jokingly this morning on Twitter, and Greg Welch at Art Director BYU said, not per FPI. Just 1 top 50 team from among the BYU opponents in the G5. Boise State at 47. So will Boise State even be in the top 44? We kid. But yes, in order to get 9 wins, it feels like BYU would probably need to go 6-0 against G5.
Well, technically, if they go 3-2, they've got the FCS game against Utah Tech.
That gets you to 9-3.
That gets you to 9-3.
That's how I came up with that number. That's right. Okay, so yes, I think 5-1 can still get you there. And let's be honest. That's probably the reality. Going 6-0 is hard against the G5 teams, no matter how good BYU is. You look at who BYU is facing. Obviously, these are all winnable games. Boise State is the toughest game, no doubt, given the history, given who Boise State is, given last season. Utah State was way better than we thought last year. Basically, BYU beat Utah and Utah State, and they got real good after that. BYU got them at a good time, and I'd be confident with BYU later in the season against those guys too. But BYU took advantage because That was September 29th. Utah State goes 11-3, wins the Mountain West. They have a banner year. They finished top 25. But clearly, Boise State's the toughest game. Going undefeated, Spence, is hard, which brings us to our stat of the day.
It's the BYU Sports Nation stat of the day.
The last time BYU went undefeated against a group of 5 teams was in 2015, 7-0.
7 years.
It's hard to beat all the group of 5 teams. Like, you stumble at least once, typically. Like 2020, unbelievable team. Obviously, a weird game at Coastal. There's one G5 loss there. Granted, Coastal was a very good team. They were top 20 as well. So that's why I say 5-1. I think 5-1 is probably that's my prediction of what happens. 5-1.
So the key to BYU
I don't
going
want any G5.
unbeaten against a group of 5 teams in Independence has been beating Boise State. Like, the key will be to beat Boise State.
If you beat Boise State, certainly you have a shot.
Then you've got a great shot.
Because they're by far the toughest there. Utah State, the other toughest.
So assuming health, we're assuming health.
We do.
Go back last year, Jaron Hall was not healthy against Boise State.
And neither was Baylor Romney. That was the real issue.
Baylor Romney had to sit out because he was concussed the week before against Utah State.
If Baylor
could not play.
I think if a healthy Baylor Romney's in there and you don't have to play an already injured Jaron Hall.
BYU beats Boise State. Yes.
Although, did Tyler Algier and Lopini Katoa, those 3 fumbles, did those have anything to do with Jaron Hall? No. Do we just think Jaron's going to move the ball down the field more in the other possessions?
Yeah, Jaron was clearly limited in his ability to do what he usually does. He's playing with broken ribs. Like, he could not get the ball down the field with as much gusto, as much velocity behind it as he wanted to. I just feel like if BYU has a healthy quarterback against Boise State last year, they win that game. And certainly
fumbled the ball 3 times.
Certainly against UAB. Okay, if Jaron Hall is healthy and playing against UAB,
you gotta like BYU's chances.
BYU's going to beat the Blazers and win their bowl game.
But we liked Baylor Romney and his ability. It still didn't work, right? Jaron, obviously, a little bit better quarterback than Baylor. That's why he was a starter. Yeah. There were issues outside of the QB, I think, in both games. BYU didn't stop the run well in the
again, BYU.
223
we feel like the depth is better overall for BYU this year, so that if they do get to a bowl game scenario at the end of the season, and it's similar to last year where they're dealing with a bunch of injuries, we think they're better equipped to handle that.
I kind of need to see it still. I hope for it. But a depth conversation in the preseason is one of my most annoying topics, frankly, because we don't actually know that. We think that you bring back experience, but is it quality depth? Are they going to actually stop the run?
This is based on what Kalani Sitake has said again and again and again, where it's like, this is the most depth I've had of any team I've coached at BYU.
Yeah, and that's due to COVID. But, are those guys going to make the plays in that game if it comes to that late in the season? Because they did not against UAB. I am still, the jury's still out a little bit for me to see. And you know what I don't want to see is the depth. Because I'd love the starters to be healthy.
I'm buying
love that.
I'm buying what Kalani is selling right now.
I'm not
buying it. I'm not saying you're not. I'm saying I'm buying it.
Yes,
I am buying it.
And what's he going to say? No, we're not deep? You know what I mean? Yes, BYU's deep.
Well, he admitted as much. He said we just were not as deep last year as we are this year.
And what are we talking about specifically? Because general depth is pretty boring to me. What are we talking about?
The depth to handle if BYU's taking on a group of 5 team they were last year in a bowl game, which is the most likely scenario.
No,
right?
I mean positions. Again, that's general.
Linebackers, for one. Secondary, another.
Okay, Pepe has moved back.
The defensive line.
Max
everywhere on the defense, we believe that there is more depth overall. And to me, that is the key to BYU sustaining and getting a perfect record taken care of against a group of 5 teams. If you have a healthy quarterback and you indeed have depth from position 1 to 11 on the defense, and that's in place, then I think why should I believe that BYU will not beat even Boise State on the road?
Because that's what happens. It's just
what
happens.
Why does Boise
some of the best BYU teams have struggled?
Why does Boise State in its current state worry BYU fans so much? This is PTSD from having gone up there and lost so many times, right?
And I don't even know if it's Boise State I'm worried about per se. I'm just saying there's a game there that happens often.
Right.
I don't know exactly what game it is.
Here's the thing.
Percentage-wise, obviously, Boise State feels like it'd be that game.
Typically, those losses.
Utah State has bitten BYU and Provo before when we didn't think about it.
Typically, those losses are related to injuries, though. Straight up.
So depth has to be at quarterback as well. So, Jacob Conover's got to be ready. We can't just pick on the defense.
Jacob Conover played in the win against Utah State last year.
He handed the ball off to Tyler a lot. Like, Jacob's got to be ready to do more, right? And I think he was, but that was like a tough spot for him to be in.
Outside of the Coastal loss, because BYU was, we think, at pretty much full health against Coastal. And that game's weird because you take it on 3 days' notice.
Because we know. Yeah.
It's hard to not just be like, okay, I can't really say BYU.
It shows that.
Yeah.
It shows that.
Right. So the Coastal game aside, typically if BYU loses to a group of 5 opponent in the last few years, injuries are heavily involved.
Then depth has to be there. And it's got to be in particular at quarterback because we can't. Yeah, the excuse we sort of just brought up, right, was that Jaron Hall wasn't healthy.
Assuming health of the quarterback.
Then Jacob Conover's got to be ready, right? And obviously BYU, in the independents here, 31-8. That's good. That's a good record. Although you'd think, hey, 8 losses feels like a lot, and a lot of those happened in 2017. Let's be honest. And even 2018 with a young group, you had a Northern Illinois loss in there where you were like, what? What was that? That was a weird one, right? BYU loses that game 7-6. It's a young Zach Wilson.
Second start.
You lose to Utah State, I think, the week before and whatnot. And Zach comes in at the end, and then he gets to start later. So, yeah, you got to be ready. Because if BYU can go 6-0 against G5, now we're talking about this team maxing out its capability, which we think is to go 9+.
If BYU is to win 10 games.
It's hard to go in, as we talked about, 2015, last time BYU beat all the G5s.
The most likely case to a 10-win season, a third consecutive 10-win season, is going 6-0 against a group of 5s. And then a 3-2 record against Power 5s, and you beat Utah Tech and you're 10-2.
And if BYU's as deep as we're saying, they should be able to sustain that.
Why? Exactly.
Yes.
Assuming health, I think BYU should go 6-0 against a group of 5s.
Well, if you're talking about being deep, then you should be able to say, okay, even if we get banged up, we're still going to win all these games.
Well, yes.
Right?
That's what I'm saying.
We can't go, yeah, we're deep, and then if BYU loses a game like this, go, well, the starters are out. No. You can't use the depth and not excuse that.
This is what we're using from Kalani, right? Buying the depth.
Let's go.
We should beat all the group of 5s.
Show me.
It starts in week number 1 against a sneaky group of 5 opponent. Hit it.
Countdown to the Bulls.
15 days. That extra syllable, it'll get you.
I guess we could have done 15 days away.
Yeah,
but that's
some real syncopation.
That's real syncopation.
Oh, yeah. We're
2 weeks from tomorrow. BYU's got a game 2 weeks from tomorrow.
We're not talking about practice. A game.
Game. Our question of the day. Do all of you expect BYU to go undefeated 6-0 against their group of 5 counterparts this season? Let's hear from you and go to Voice of the Nation.
This is the Voice of the Nation on BYU Sports Nation.
At GHardy616 on Instagram says,
First 616. I like that.
Best case, BYU goes 6-0. Yes,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Worst case, I think BYU goes 4-2. My non-blue-goggledness
that's the first time that's ever been typed out.
Tells me BYU is going 5-1 against the 6 group of 5s.
Where I'm at. I don't know what game. It's just last year we wouldn't have said, if we said 6-1 versus P5, but BYU's losing 2 G5s. You're like, no way. That doesn't happen.
The true test of depth,
it happens
to me, is beating all of the teams that you probably should be. Like, BYU feels like they're better than all their group of 5 opponents.
They are, absolutely. The 6 G5s and Utah Tech, there's 7 wins there. Just go get 2 or 3 other ones. Stanford, Baylor, Arkansas. 10 wins. Go.
Yeah. The majority of those 7 games just brought up are in Provo as well. Take care of business.
Every day! Coming up.
BYUSN, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
Would you rather be a Bronco or a Tiger? And why are we bringing this up?
And Jason Shepard goes one-on-one with BYU offensive line coach Darrell Funk. He's not drinking the poison for sure, right? This is BYU Sports Nation.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by BYU Food To Go, the MVP of your next event.
Those who leave the most meaningful legacy seem to be the ones who never intended to. The same person who loses himself seems to be the same that finds himself. And why? Well, they give the best of who they really are with no thought of return. Find a cause you can put your heart into, my son, in which to lose yourself. I started the Deseret Donor Advised Fund for this reason. Because in the end, my greatest legacy is you.
Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork sells Ford vehicles including the F-150, the pickup designed for work and play. Tim Daly Ford maintains a large inventory, providing more choices for selecting an F-150 with the power and engineering to carry and tow heavy loads. The F-150's design offers comfort, safety, and a range of options to choose from. Think Ford, think Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork.
Is BYU football with Kalani Sitake and Greg Wrubell.
When I was younger, I was a better dancer. Don't show any more dancing. Yeah, okay, good. I think we've developed some really good habits the last couple of weeks and looking to step it up again. A lot of great things can happen when they carry.
Not bad. That's good stuff.
Hey. Yeah, thank you for ending on that one. That was a good one.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
After further review breaks down Cougar football X's and O's like nobody else, watch new episodes Tuesday at 7 Eastern and on demand via the free BYU TV app.
We are live in Studio C with your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I'm Spencer Linton alongside Jarom Jordan. Yes, it's BYUSN. It's also Daddy's show the last 2 days, right?
Absolutely.
Great stuff. Also great, Jason Shepard has taken his talents to the practice field with BYU football to go one-on-one with BYU offensive line coach Darrell Funk. Among topics discussed, bringing the Funk, you better believe Jason said that when he got back from the interview, deciding on starters and the emotions of coaching such a big physical bunch. This is Darrell Funk, one-on-one with Jason Shepard.
All right, Coach, you always get to hear from the players how camp is going. From a coaching standpoint, specifically the offensive line, how are things going for you guys?
Well, I think they're going good, and I know fans and media probably get tired of hearing the coach speak. Yeah, it's a work in progress. It is true, but I think it's going real well. We have our up days, we have our down days. Our defense, I think, is terrific and doing a lot of good things. So we kind of battle back and forth and just trying to get better every day. But overall, we're heading the right direction for sure.
I think that's something that may get overlooked a whole lot in terms of who the offensive line and the offense in general has to go against and how much that helps or hurts how a line or a position progresses through camp. You touched on it, being able to go against this defense. How much does that help you, not just in terms of getting better, but in an evaluation process as well?
Well, it's a huge help to evaluate because if all you're doing is going against younger kids or scout team or whatever, and you don't get a real true evaluation. But you start going against Zoe and Peely and Peyton and those kind of guys, it gives you an idea. And even though the scheme we're facing on a daily basis isn't the same as we may see, still it's good on good. Guys that know how to play defense giving us trouble, and we block it sometimes good. But yeah, it's huge to go against real good players.
From your standpoint, you've obviously been doing this a long time. How you approach the offensive line and coaching it change from year to year, or is it maybe even practice to practice? How do you handle that?
Well, that's a great question. I think about that a lot. When I was a younger O-line coach, I probably used to beat the heck out of them, and just everything had to be full and live and hitting and everything from individual all the way to the team. I don't do that anymore, so I probably got smarter that way. Probably, if anything, I've gotten simpler in what I want to do over the years because the simpler the schemes are, the less rules you have linemen to have, the faster they play. And the defenses these days, they run fast, they're fast twitch, all that. It's moving pictures, no one just sits there and takes on blocks anymore. They move. So I got to have guys that can do that. But it's interesting. It's a great question. And here after 33, 34 years, whatever it is, I don't pretend to have all the answers. But the other part of it is each group you have every year is a little different. This is a veteran group. This is guys that played a lot of football. It doesn't mean you don't coach them, but maybe you can coach certain aspects that are a little more advanced than a freshman or a little more advanced. I've had teams where 4 of the 5 starters were redshirt freshmen. I've had that before. That's a way different thing. So these kids here in this room are great, and they make it a lot of fun to coach. And like I said, we're on the right track.
I've got to imagine, too, the modern athlete is so much different in terms of their preparation before camps even start. We see this in college. We see this in pros. Nobody's showing up to training camp to get in shape in the pros. Nobody's showing up to fall camp at that point just to get in shape for the season. How much has that changed the shape and the stuff that these guys do in the off season coming into a year? How much has that changed?
It's changed a lot for what we used to have to do. And like you say, and anyone that does come into camp these days that's not in great shape, it's a tough road to hoe because they're practicing and working themselves into shape. Some might have early morning, cardio club with Dan or something like that. But that hasn't really been the case the last 8 or 10 years. When I was a young coach, or even 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was, used to incorporate some conditioning drills after practice. Our guys, we get our conditioning in our team stuff and in our Indy, but we used to have to run after practice. A lot of my individual drills were agility drills, which you really don't need to do anymore because Nuu does those all summer and everything. So when you get to camp, you're not a finished product as a football player because we still got to install the offense, learn all that. But you should be pretty dang close to at least camp shape, if not pretty close to season shape by then. So it is different.
When you look at this offensive line right now, you already touched on the fact that it is absolutely a veteran group. What excites you about what you see and its potential?
Well, whenever you have, the better players you have, the better coach you are. And any coach that pretends that's not the case is living in a dream world. So we got really good, talented players. So that's a great place to start. We got kids that have played a lot of football, so the experience really helps. And when you have the combined things, you got talent and you got experience, it should be a really good group. Probably my biggest concern at this point is because we haven't settled on 5 and because I don't know the rotation yet, we haven't gotten into that flow of it. But with 2.5 weeks left, we got time to do that. But that would be the next step.
How close do you think you are to naming, or maybe not naming publicly, but at least knowing who those starting 5 are?
Close. I'm close, and what we'll probably do is go into that game with, obviously the 5 starters, and then probably a third guy on the right side, a third guy on the left side that gives us a chance to rotate and keep guys fresh. I'm probably thinking a 7-man rotation to start, but I'm getting close to it. It'll probably be early next week.
What's maybe the variables that's holding that up right now? Is it that you just have a lot of guys that are vying for playing time?
I think it's that. These guys are graded. Everything they do in practice is graded. So you have a number grade. You have their one-on-one pass pro grade. You have, you keep track of missed assignments. I'm doing everything to calculate that part of it. But at the same time, I am taking a heavy look at, okay, who had the best rhythm today as an offense? Who gave our offense the best chance to win today? Was it this group? Was it this group? So once it's all factored in, I think it'll be a feel for not only who are the best 5 players, but who plays the best together. And we're starting to really see patterns of that. We're mixing and matching a little bit, and that's partly we do it because we have to cross-train guys because they might be a backup here or a third here. But partly we're doing it to give these guys every chance they can to show who should be in the top 5. And we're getting real close to that spot right now.
How much are you able to implement scheme for week 1's opponent at this point?
We've been doing it really from the start. Sneaking into meetings. We've been, looking at those defenses. Because like I said, our defense is really good, but we won't see most of that stuff. There's some stuff we'll see. But we've had to do that. So when we have our little scouted run periods or different things, we've already now some of the kids don't realize it yet. But when we start getting into full scout teams, they're going to be like, oh, wait, we've seen that. Oh, yeah, we've been blocking that for 2 weeks. So that's what we've been doing.
What's been your early impressions, or maybe you've had a lot longer to look at it, the opposing line that you guys will be facing in week 1? What stood out to you about South Florida from what you've seen?
Well, obviously they got a lot of new guys and new transfers and different things. So, you know, we're evaluating. Some of those guys didn't have much tape from their schools. They transferred. Some did. Some of the guys that played last year and in a different scheme, you know, we saw them last year. So it's, and I think our analysts and our GAs are doing a real good job of setting that up for us. We're not into that full-time as a full-time staff yet. Like I said, we're just kind of doing this and that. We're still kind of in camp mode. But as we switch, our young coaches have set us up real good, and they've got tape of these guys. Sometimes that's hard. In this transfer portal era, you got to look at, you know, Minnesota tape and try to find a kid on that tape, or you got to find a couple clips from Missouri or wherever else, Kansas State. And so it'll be a little bit of a mystery going into that first game. But the good thing about our system is the rules have been set here for 2 or 3 years. They haven't changed much. So if we get a different defense that we're expecting or something else, we've got rules that cover all that. We just adjust to it and go. But we're starting on that. The question you asked is a great. We're starting on that already.
We hear the term the dog days. At this point where you're more than halfway in and you can kind of see the end in sight, do you have to mix things up, or is it getting a little too monotonous in terms of camp, or have the guys handled that well at this point?
They've handled it well. We've had a couple down days, and you know, kids are kids. You're going to have a day or two where either just not ready to practice, or you know, our defense just was all over in one day. That's going to happen. We got a good defense. That's going to happen. But I chuckle a little bit because my definition of the dog days of, I say 2-a-days sometimes. We don't have 2-a-days. And I was all for that. When they get it away with 2-a-days, I worked with a lot of coaches that, kids are soft these days. I was for it because it helped cut down concussion. I was for all that. I'm good with that. But by the same token, these kids don't really understand, and I'm glad they don't. Having someone bang on your door with a baseball bat in the dorm at 6 in the morning and go all day and then cut you loose at 10 o'clock, hand you a snack, and send you to bed. They don't understand that. Our kids have a little bit more free time to do some stuff, watch tape, and most important, get rest. So I chuckle a little bit at it, but in a relative sense, they have done a really good job for what we give them.
All right, last question. How much are you enjoying this? Like we said, you've been doing this a long time, but you look like you're still having fun out there.
I love this. I really do. You know, I say this to recruits, I say this to my kids in the room, and it's true. I got in this profession for the right reason back long ago because the game was great to me. I was given a full ride scholarship. I had coaches that believed in me, and it turned into a career. And here I am 30-some odd years later, but I love what I do. I pinch myself, especially when I'm looking at these mountains. I'm a mountain guy. I'm from Colorado, but these are a lot closer than Fort
Pretty
Collins.
Awesome, isn't it?
Awesome. I get caught off guard just like I am now, but what I was trying to say is I pinch myself. One, you know, I get to coach a game, you know, that I love. Two, I get to coach kids, whatever their ages are, 18 to 25, whatever it is. And three, I got to work with a staff like this that loves what they're doing. So I'm really fired up.
And you get to do media, right? You're looking forward to that, right?
Media.
Okay, that's what we like to hear.
I'm ready. Yeah, I get to do media. That's the fourth one.
Just want to make sure we got that on camera. Coach, thank you so much. Great insight, and good luck the rest of the way.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Darrell Funk has a very interesting and tough decision to make before USF. Like, you've got 8 dudes, okay? The legitimate could be like, yeah, we'll start.
Speaking of depth.
Yes, the depth is there on the offensive line.
Yeah.
You got 8 guys. You got to pick 5.
Also, a note, I would like my offensive line coach to look like an offensive line coach, and Darrell Funk looks like an offensive line coach and sounds like an offensive line coach. I want that guy to be a little gruff, like in appearance and voice, just because he's been getting after it. So, yeah. Plus, he has a fun last name for broadcasters, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking about all of the previous offensive line coaches, and they all kind of fit that bill.
They all fit that bill.
Garrett Tujay, Ryan Pugh.
It'd be hilarious if they just had, like, some skinny chump like me coaching the O-line. Like, yeah, these guys are big and tall.
Certainly. I mean, Jeff Grimes was the offensive coordinator, but he certainly spent a ton of time with the offensive line. Like, Grimes fits that mold.
Oh, yeah, like
Eric
kind
Mateos,
of a deeper voice, like a little bit of facial hair.
Yeah.
Honor coat's like, you're close. Coming up. Is Utah the most underrated college football state?
We didn't say it. And who will have more rushing yards this season? Tyler Algier in the NFL with the Falcons or Lopini Katoa for BYU?
Ooh, nice.
This is BYU Sports Nation. Hi, Spencer Linton here, letting you know when your company joins the BYU team as a corporate partner, your brand can be featured in sports programming on BYU TV and BYU Radio. In addition to all of the great games, you can be part of the BYU coaches shows, place your message in Countdown to Kickoff, basketball pre- and post-game shows, and each weekday on BYU Sports Nation. We invite your team to join ours and become a corporate sponsor of BYU Athletics. For details, email sponsorship@byu.edu today.
They prefer to be bringing the heat, getting set for success, demonstrating their drive. But when their blood and sweat turns to tears or anything else, we lay the groundwork for BYU's athletes to hit the ground running again, and you as well. Intermountain Healthcare, official medical provider for BYU Athletics.
BYU Food To Go's convenient location at 2191 North Canyon Road in Provo makes bringing popular BYU foods to your next event easy. Everything's ready when you need it at the drive and load pickup. You drive in and they load no matter the weather. And stop in the on-site creamery for great BYU chocolate milk and ice cream. BYU Food To Go, bringing campus to your table. Call for details, 801-422-5001.
Home is just about to get a whole lot happier.
So you've been living with no furniture for about 2 months. Well, we're about to change that for you.
Watch as helpful folks lend a hand to those in need. See them refurbish and replenish homes all over the world.
Caitlin left her house when she was 13, and now she's finally home.
With all kinds of shows to explore on the BYU TV app, you're sure to find loads your family can watch together. Stream them all for free.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
Make sure you get all the Cougar sports content you could want by following BYU Sports Nation on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube, and the TikTok.
Here's Jarom. I am Spencer. Now it's time to whip it. Cougar Whip Around, presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
The Atlanta Falcons posted a rookie spotlight video of Tyler Algier where he outlined his journey to BYU in the NFL. We love Tyler. Who will have more rushing yards this year? Tyler Algier with the Falcons or Lopini Katoa with the Brighams?
I love Lopini Katoa. He's more of a combo back than Tyler is going to be in Atlanta this year. So Lopini catches a lot of footballs. Straight up rush yards, I think it's going to be Tyler, and it's not going to be close, Jarom.
Mike Davis was the second leading rusher. He had 500 yards last year.
Mike Davis is no longer with the Falcons.
Right.
It's Darrell Patterson
as the main guy.
Algier. Now, and here's the other thing that Tyler has going for him. This season, he's got 17 games to do it. Lopini's only got 13.
Right.
Lopini's previous high was 34 yards a game on average. Can Tyler average, and so taking into consideration more games, all Tyler needs to do is average more than 26 yards a game to beat Lopini's previous season high.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be Tyler.
Lopini rushed for 423 last year. I think Tyler, outdoes him in that way. So maybe we need to go per game and look
more
at
yards
this later.
Per game?
Yeah.
Then it's a little bit
per
closer,
game's
right?
Probably a more fair competition.
Yeah.
Or if you did total offense, meaning any pass, rush, catch, right?
Total offense is a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, because it's taking into account the receiver.
Exactly. Now that's very
We'll look at that later in the season.
Okay. Jake Crane, a host of a sports talk show called Crane & Co.
Also sounds like a law firm.
The state of Utah is the most underrated college football state.
Yep.
Do you agree with Jake Crane?
Made some great points that I agree with. Obviously, the fact that it's the only state with 3 ranked teams in the final AP poll last year was pretty cool. Utah State's the key to that, right?
He even brought up Weber State in the FCS.
You think of California, Texas, Florida, that BYU outdid even those states pretty good. Michigan, Ohio, you'd think could put out sometimes multiple with Cincinnati, Ohio State, and so on. Yeah, only 3 million people that live here, but Grand Canyon's become this national power.
Yeah.
You even think about basketball, Spence. Wasatch Academy is a top 10 team. There's some good ball here. Like pound for pound, Utah's pretty awesome, man.
I don't know. And Tim Brando, our guy. He's always been a big proponent of BYU.
He's our guy? I didn't know that.
He quoted, "This is pure college football truth," quote tweeting Jake Crane. Yeah, Utah.
And then at the bottom we put paid advertising.
I mean, seriously, what other state the size of Utah, with a population of just over 3 million people, is producing 3 top 25 caliber football teams in the same season?
Yeah, and granted, it was one season.
One season.
But right now, BYU and Utah are in this top 25 mode.
Right.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, Utah State's in a great place.
Yep.
And like I said, he brought up Weber State. Good FCS program.
Jay Hill.
Shout out to our guy Jay Hill for sure.
Absolutely.
On we go, Jarom.
Okay, what would be the bigger top 44 win this season, Boise State or Utah State?
At Boise State for sure. Everything on the line. Maybe the last time BYU ever plays Boise State, we don't know. Like, we think BYU and Utah State are going to play again, right?
Yes.
Who knows if and when BYU and Boise State are going to play again.
I'm cool if we don't, because I would like a P5 in the form of Utah or a bigger name than Utah, a G5. Sometimes that could be Utah State, and an FCS. That's what I want out of the 3 games.
So there's unsettled business here with Boise State. They essentially ruined any real shot that BYU had of getting into a New Year's Six bowl game last year.
And BYU did it to them in 2019.
Correct.
Yeah.
So settle the score again one more time up in Boise.
Boise State, no doubt.
That would be the bigger one. Big Game Boomer posted a list of the most famous celebrity fan for every school. He has Aaron Eckhart as BYU's most famous fan. Okay? Two-Face.
Like alumni? Oh, a celebrity fan.
Celebrity
Is Aaron
fan.
Eckhart a celebrity fan of BYU? I don't know that he's very public about that he went to BYU.
Based on him, a few pictures of him wearing a BYU hat, but that was like 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think he's super vocal about BYU, but we'd love to have him back here anytime he wants.
Like, who is like the most outspoken famous fans? Probably Steve Young.
I would say Steve Young. If you go like non-sports, you got to be like, is it like, did Donnie Osmond go here for a semester?
Maybe it's Donnie or Marie, right? Donnie and Marie.
Or Dale Murphy, because he went to, I guess non-sports.
Okay, well, listen.
Dan Reynolds, Imagine Dragons.
Is Big Game Boomer right listing Aaron Eckhart and not any of the previous people we discussed?
I don't know in terms of like influence. Stephanie Meyer wrote Twilight, wasn't here, right? Jared Hess, Napoleon Dynamite.
It might be Donnie and Marie, Jarom. Like the most widely recognized.
And my mom and your mom would really like that answer as well. Absolutely. Utah's was listed as Big Game Boomer, so that's pretty funny. By the way,
fantastic.
Utah State's was Nolan Bushnell, who created Atari and Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, that's legit.
I didn't know who Nolan Bushnell was until this morning.
That's legit.
On the ESPN Plus broadcast of the women's soccer game last night, a graphic said BYU Broncos.
BYU Broncos.
This just in, BYU has changed its mascot. Just kidding. What? In the 2018, there it is. In the Potato Bowl in 2018, the postgame, the Cougars were called the Tigers.
Congratulations to your BYU Tigers.
There it is. Would you rather be a Bronco or a Tiger?
I'd rather be a tiger. Tigers are ferocious. Also, it's in the feline family.
It's in the feline family.
Similar to a cougar in a few ways.
But the Bronco Mendenhalls, is that what they were getting at?
Broncos?
The Broncos, BYU?
I think somebody thought Boise was singing Boise State.
Well, if there had been an apostrophe, suddenly it becomes like Bronco Mendenhall's BYU.
He owns BYU. It's Broncos BYU, not just any BYU.
For a
it's
minute,
Broncos
he did.
BYU.
Yeah, for a few years he did. So yeah.
I would much rather be a Tiger in this regard. the BYU Broncos.
Shout out to that font coordinator. It happens.
Yeah, the font is interesting too. Listing the mascot before the name, that's also an interesting take.
Cougars BYU are going to crush it this year. Beat those G5s.
All right. Bronco aside, the opening line of Bill Connolly's article today on ESPN about how to make the season fun goes like this, and I quote, "The college football extended universe is something a fiction writer could only dream of creating. Star Wars never had a side plot as worthwhile as the BYU-Utah Holy War." Jarom, you're a Star Wars guy. Is that statement fact or galactic blasphemy?
Nice. BYU-Utah is pretty good. Although I have enjoyed the, I just finished Clone Wars, so the Ahsoka Mandalore storyline was pretty juicy. Could have done without the Martez sisters at the end in season 7. But anyway, I'm into Rebels now, and I haven't seen it, and so I'm excited to see where this goes.
When are you going to start your blog? Or at least like a podcast about this?
Because I don't have time.
You're missing your passion, Jarom.
I don't work for free anymore, bro, except in church. Coming up, today's Rise and Cheddar.
And further expansion news, or is it much ado about nothing? The Big Ten's causing havoc again. This is BYU Sports Nation.
Such a good pick, dude.
My
name is Spencer Finnegan. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. During my sophomore year, I got married to my sweetheart, Mary, and there's tons of unexpected expenses when it comes to marriage. We were looking for scholarships. I found the replenishment grant, and my local alumni chapter gave me a grant to help me focus in on school. I'm so excited to, now that I've graduated, give back to those students that are coming to BYU in the future.
I know what it's like to be overlooked, to be doubted, to fly under the radar. I only had one offer coming out of high school, but I was ready for every moment, every opportunity, and every shot that I got. Now I'm playing professional basketball, aiming to be one of the best shooters on the planet. And I'm just getting started. Be ready for your moment with Rapid Reboot, the future of rapid recovery.
Cosmic fish have spoken to me. I'm an alien.
What, have you been tap dancing on the barbecue again?
I think my Captain Alphabet is sending me a message. The mothership is calling me home.
I'm the alien. No!
We have to save Gonzo from a whole army of government agents.
I have a joke for drumsticks.
I have some loose jello, okay?
Gonzo's one of us, and no matter what happens, we never forget one of our own.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
Make sure you subscribe to the BYU Sports Nation YouTube channel for interviews, what's trending, and entire episodes, should you choose to watch on that platform.
Welcome back to BYU Sports Nation. We are live in Studio C on a Friday. This is how we do it. Friend of the program, Brett McMurphy, tweeted out this morning that the Big Ten's Kevin Warren, commissioner, sees the Big Ten having 20 members in the future. Okay, they're at 16 with the addition of USC and UCLA.
So
adding 4 more teams.
But wait, we need the context.
And getting to 20, okay? So here's the exchange between Real Sports HBO's Bryant Gumbel and the aforementioned Kevin Warren, Big Ten commissioner. Bryant Gumbel, you're at 16 teams now. Could you foresee 20? Kevin Warren, I could, yeah. I could see perpetual and future growth.
So he doesn't necessarily say 20. He just said, yeah.
The idea is out there. The idea is in their minds, right? It's in his mind, at least.
Yeah, of course it is. You want to eliminate one of the Power 5 leagues? You could.
Is this
just invite Oregon and Washington?
Is this a big deal or no deal that exchange happened between Bryant Gumbel and Kevin Warren?
No deal, because we already knew this. He's said other comments similar to this of like, yeah, and we're still looking. Like, it's not, yeah. Brett Yormark said, we're open for business. Like, you know who isn't? The Pac-12. The Pac-12 isn't like, you know what? We're open for business too. Come on over, Oklahoma State, or whatever. Not a big deal to me, though. Although this could be obviously very interesting. The Pac-12 is a house of cards currently. If 2 teams leave, they're donezo, you'd think, as a power league. Depends what teams, well, any 2 probably. If the Arizona State came to the Big 12. There's no smoke anymore. We're close to the season. It's going to dither down. Yeah. The Pac-12 TV contract is really interesting now because the Big Ten, we learned in the contract, has escalator clauses of additional teams.
You add more, you get more money.
Right? And not sure if it's more, but just like we will equal it per team maybe, right? I didn't see exactly
Sorry, the total number goes up. You will,
yes,
yeah,
but you may not get an increase.
You don't have to split the money more ways, like less, right?
You'd never invite anybody if that's the case.
It would
that's
be like,
why
hey,
BYU was never invited. It didn't add value.
If you invite these other 4 teams, we will give them $62.5 million per year as well.
And that's a big ad. You're saying,
another $245 million.
If you go 4, right?
Sorry, another $250 million.
It's a lot. Hey, what's $6 million when you have $250? You're just like, chump change. It's in the car. In the form of Sacagawea dollars, But if it's a Pac-12 TV contract, they are trying to figure that out for 2 years from now, right? Or is it next year? I think it's 2 years. That will tell us a lot. Like, are they staying together or not? And how many years is that contract? Because then the Big Ten would have to wait for those teams after. The reason USC and UCLA bounce when they do is because their TV deal is ending in 25. So, no, it's 3 years from now. They're trying to lock themselves into figuring out, are we together or not? The Pac-12 contract will tell us whether they are.
Okay, so I thought about this in terms of a meal, probably because I think about food a lot.
And because it's not quite lunchtime, Mountain Time, but we're getting there.
Yes. So the meal has already been prepared. And by that, I mean, like, the idea that the Big Ten could expand even more and go to 20. Like, that meal was prepared and it was on the table. And, like the Big Ten partook to a degree, and they invited USC and UCLA, and they got to 16.
Partook's a very our culture word. Nice.
And then the leftovers got put in the fridge. The only reason this is a deal is because the leftovers have been heated up again, and they're put back on the table. It's like, oh, this idea. It was always there. It's just been reheated, and the idea is being brought into the forefront once again. Like, the idea never left.
But was it air fried is the question. Because I just got an air fryer recently. Game changer. I made bacon in the air fryer this morning. Unbelievable.
The idea
very
never
different
left.
than the microwave. Okay.
It's just
so it's an air fried or microwave to you?
It's
this
microwave.
idea.
It's microwave.
It's microwave.
It's microwave.
You're
Yeah,
just
because
nuking it.
It's made and like it's just been reheated. So people are like, oh no, the Pac-12 again. And the idea never left. It's always been there. They just brought it out of the fridge and heated it up again with HBO Real Sports.
Yeah.
Put the light on it, warmed it up again, and now we're starting to see the Titanic memes, like the Pac-12 diving, and I was like, stop it.
What if?
Like, it's always been there. Like the Titanic scenario happens if, in my opinion, Oregon and Washington leave.
Well, any two from the Pac-12.
Well, that's the thing. Like
Because
you could add, like Oregon and Washington are the pillars. They can sustain. They could add two more teams if Arizona's schools left, and they'd survive, in my opinion.
They would.
If Oregon and Washington left,
it would.
Survival becomes much more difficult.
I don't think they survive. I think at that point the Big 12 plunders.
Yeah, they could add four teams,
go,
and it's like
we're adding. We
no.
might add way more. Like, why wouldn't you just add? At that point, the Big 12 could go, okay, maybe we merge now. Although the Big 12 and Pac-12 met, talked about a merger, they didn't actually decide to do it. So the Big 10 holds the cards here. But the Pac-12,
because they hold the most money.
Yes, and power. Like, those teams will bounce. And as much as like a Utah wants that Big 10 invite, doesn't feel like that's coming. And that's an Oregon-Washington thing or nothing. And if they wanted Oregon-Washington, they would have got them before they just signed up the TV
thing.
contract.
Like, that's the thing.
They're not going to do it for a couple of years if they do it, I think.
Wouldn't they have already invited Oregon and Washington if they really want? They got the West Coast time frame, Jarom.
They got
with USC and UCLA. They don't need Oregon and Washington.
Yeah.
However, I guarantee Kevin Warren's thinking, Notre Dame would be nice. Clemson would be nice.
Yeah, well, Clemson
maybe Duke and North Carolina would add some things to our conference as well.
Not in football, but certainly in basketball, right? Real quick, men's volleyball angle of this. So BYU plays in the MPSF. Mm-hmm. They have USC and UCLA still in the league despite the Big Ten move because the Big Ten does not have volleyball in men's volleyball. Ohio State and Penn State play in two different leagues actually right now that are just made-up volleyball leagues, the MIVA and the EIVA. There could be a situation where with USC and UCLA in the Big Ten, now there's 4 if you want to. You have to have 6 to field the league to go to the NCAA tournament. You can invite 2 affiliate members at that point. Did you know that Utah Valley is in the Big 12 in wrestling? Did you know that Arizona State is in the Big 10 in hockey? This happens. So I wonder at some point if the Big 10 adds men's volleyball with 2 affiliate members.
And BYU takes advantage.
And if USC and UCLA leave the MPSF, BYU, I wonder if they would listen to that idea.
Huh.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I don't know. Because if USC and UCLA leave the MPSF, now you're in real trouble as a league. Because it's like you and Stanford and Grand Canyon and Concordia Irvine, right?
Yeah.
Tough.
Expansion, not exclusive, just to football.
Right? It affects everybody. Coming up, our elite voice of the day.
And today's rise and shout out to a former Cougar he's looking a little orange these days. This is BYU Sports Nation.
From eating carrots?
Introducing the truck for adventure. The all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier doesn't compromise on power or comfort. This mid-size truck was redesigned to incorporate the latest technology and designs for safety, comfort, and convenience. Plus, with up to 6,700 pounds of towing capacity and best-in-class horsepower, it's rugged enough for adventure and still safe enough to transport all your favorite people. Where's your new Frontier? You'll find it at Tim Dowling Nissan Southtown and South Jordan.
Gather the family for a midweek pick-me-up with an all-new lineup Wednesdays on BYU TV.
Is that cool? Is that okay?
You want inspiring? Yeah, we got that. Fun? Definitely. And surprising? Well, you'll just have to find out. Enjoy a marathon of good works to lift and inspire you for the rest of your week. See it all Wednesdays on BYU TV or anytime on the free app.
This is BYU Football with Kalani Sitake and Greg Wrubell.
When I was younger, I was a better dancer. Don't show any more dancing. Okay, good. I think we've developed some really good habits the last couple of weeks and looking to step it up again. A lot of great things can happen when they care.
Not bad. That's good stuff.
Hey.
Yay.
Yeah, thank you for ending on that one. That was a good one.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics.
Make sure to download the BYU TV and BYU Radio apps or subscribe to the podcast, rate, and review as well.
Our question of the day, do you expect BYU football to go 6-0 against their group of 5 opponents in the 2022 season? Let's run them down really fast, Jarom. USF, okay, Utah State, Wyoming, Liberty, East Carolina,
Boise State. Yep. And then, of course, an FCS game with Utah Tech, but we're assuming, BYU wins.
6 group of 5 teams. Michael Christensen on Twitter says, expect is such an interesting word. I hope for it. I want it. Dare I say, I even believe it could happen. But no, I don't expect it. 5-1 more likely.
Yeah, I'm in that camp of like, okay, the hope, of course, is 6-0. Take care of business against everybody. You have a chance at 10 wins.
This is Kalani's best team.
Yes.
If this is Kalani's best team, they should win all 6 of those games.
Yes, do it.
All right, our Elite Voice of the Day presented by Sundance Mountain Resort from Bayoeste on Twitter says, gee, I guess so. But I think it more like 8-0 versus the G6 if you include Oregon and Stanford. Oh.
Oregon's like,
come on now,
ranked 11th.
Oregon's ranked 14 spots higher than BYU right now.
Can't be calling them G6 when they ain't got that money.
Oh, Stanford's endowment also is definitely not G6.
Listen, if only Deseret Industries was like Nike, right? Then we'd be in the same place as Oregon.
Today's Rise and Shout-Outs presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics. Our good friend Micah Simon has found a new assignment with some former BYU guys as an offensive analyst for Syracuse football.
He's been hereby called. So have fun with Jason Beck and Robert and I, and Coy Detmer Jr. That'll be awesome.
Super cool. Well done, Micah.
Yeah.
Our thanks to today's guest, Darrell Funk.
Started Dennis Pitta. We ran out of time. Conversation continues 24/7 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Use hashtag BYUSN.
For Jarom Jordan, I am Spencer Linton. Shout out to Amy Boswell. We'll see you on Monday for more BYU Sports Nation when we're less than 2 weeks away from an actual BYU football game. Go Cougs.